Hello. So today I want to talk about biographies and how biographies can actually reveal more about yourself than you might be expecting. So it's a great self-help tool that doesn't look like a self-help tool. So thank you for being here today. My name is Peggy van der Plas, and I don't know for you, but I've always loved reading. I would really call it a love affair with reading since I was a kid. But there is a genre, sorry, that I actually embraced quite late, and it is biographies. And very simply, early on, when I read biographies, I would say, gravitated towards, business biographies, political biographies, and I just found them very flat. Very often they're like hagiographies. You know what it means. Hagiographies is a saint biography. They're very one-dimensional. They only recount, super successful lives where success is, overplayed and quality is overstated. Well, actually, greed, timing, luck, ruthlessness, privilege are conveniently forgotten. And whether these biographies were critical or glowing, I think they really lacked something fundamental, which is self-awareness, self-reflection, and self-criticism. And when these biographies were written by official biographers, I just felt that they were overtly polished. And when they were written by outsiders, I thought they were more like reeking of bitterness and jealousy and never really struck me as honest. So for a while, I just stopped reading biographies altogether because I really thought, the fakeness, the exaggeration, and sometimes the flat out lies really left me with a bad taste. But it's really when I started reading the biographies of artists and athletes that I really fell in love with the genre of biographies, because these guys and gals, they don't pitch you on how amazing they are. They tend to be raw, they tend to be sincere, and they are actually oddly self-reflective. Some of my all-time favorites were Keith Richards, the guitarist of the Rolling Stones, and Andre Agassi, the tennis player. And what I really like with these books is that they don't just shine a light on talent and triumphs, but also on failure, on luck, on flaws, on serendipity, and everything is really wrapped in humanity. I do think they are way more inspiring, actually, even if I'm a business person. They're way more inspiring than the very sanitized journeys of business leaders. Even if I have no intention of becoming a rock star or maybe a tennis champion, but who knows, the night's still young. Maybe I'll go in that direction. But very recently, as I say, I read a lot. I really devoured the biographies of Jane Birkin, who was a British singer who was adopted by friends early on, John Didion and Babitz, who were American writers, and David Bowie, who was a British rock star, if you don't know David Bowie. And what I really love the most is that even though the authors, the writers, they clearly admire their subjects, they still show everything: the good, the bad, the ugly, the wonderful. So if you take David Bowie, for example, definitely a genius of reinvention, but who also borrowed liberally from others. He used his sexuality very strategically for his career, and he was known to discard his collaborators with little concern. At the same time, his work ethic and intuition for zeitgeist were really unmatched. So, reading about him really made me ask, okay, when am I David Bowie in my life? Should I be more David Bowie in my life? Or maybe should I be less David Bowie in my life? So I find it very interesting in terms of self-reflection to live these lives that look like have nothing to do with yours, but maybe inspire you and see actually a different facet of your life. So Jane Birkin, for example. So she was always seen as a muse, of successful men, obviously Serge Gainsbourg, Doilon. And but she decided to, at some point, to really stand up on her own 2 feet as an artist. And it was interesting to read that book and see her wrestle with her identity and, change the perception others have of her as a muse versus an artist. And, it raised the question for my own life, where have I let others define my own narrative, or do I reclaim my own narrative? So it's, again, very interesting to read these lives and look at what it means for you. And I will finish with like a book that I really, really loved. Actually, I have it. Yeah, I have it here, which is Didion and Babitz, which was published earlier this year. And it's very interesting because the biographies of 2 people at the same time, obviously, John Didion and Yves Babitz, and they're really 2 sides of the same coin. One, Didion, very cerebral, very restrained, selling out, air quoting, selling out for success. The other, Yves Babitz, chaotic, fiery, self-destructive, really in the pursuit of our authenticity. And again, I looked at it and I was like, should I be more like Didion, strategic and disciplined, or more like Babitz, unfiltered and free? So it's, again, what I really like when I read biographies, and I read biographies of people sometimes I already know, Andrea Agassi, David Bowie, Jane Birkin, and over times it's someone I've never fully encountered before, like John Didion, Yves Babitz, Leonard Cohen. It doesn't really matter whether I'm rediscovering a familiar figure or meeting a new one. I always end up learning a lot about them and about myself. And I love, after that, or at the same time I'm reading, visiting or revisiting their work, re-listening to Bowie's, for example, or reading Didion's book that I didn't know, with that context. So the biography also becomes a lens that really sharpens their world, but also mine. And I would say every biography is an exercise in empathy. It's a reminder that even the most extraordinary lives are built on the same mix of contradictions, choices, emotions that we all carry. And that's what I love about biographies. They act as mirrors. They invite us to see ourselves, not just who we are, but who we might become. Behind every extraordinary life, there is a very familiar mix of success and failure, trauma and privilege, good timing, bad timing. And biographies really remind us that greatness is not linear. It's messy, it's real, it's human. And I really, really look at biographies personal development tools that are disguised as stories. They really allow us to reflect on our own journeys through the lens of others and to ask better questions about our own. And that's the thing, is that often it's difficult to see ourselves, but through someone we can kind of project and then ask ourselves questions we would not ask if we were just looking at our own story. So what's on my nightstand? What's my next biography? It's Leonard Cohen, because obviously, well, that's going to be quite exciting to explore the human condition through his life, the life of a poet who really spent years balancing, devotion, despair, love, transcendence. So I'm going to ask you a question. What is your next biography? So thank you so much for being with me today. I hope you enjoyed that podcast, and yes, subscribe, like, comment. But more importantly, look at maybe reading a biography of someone you know, you like, or even someone you don't know or don't like. That's even more interesting. And use it as a mirror and again, a self-development tool. It's very cheap. You can actually even borrow a book at the library, which is going to make it free, actually, if you don't take into consideration your taxes. And you can really use it as a fabulous tool for yourself. Thank you again for being here, and I wish you a wonderful week. See you next week. Bye.